Welcome to Anecdotes for Success with Matt and Paul. Storytelling is an art form, emphasizing the value and learning that is created through personal experience. Our purpose is to share these stories and experiences with the listener. Everyone has a powerful testimony. Let's use them to level up to our best life with truth, meaning, trade-offs, and perspective.
These ones are fun, Matt. When we literally get a chance to talk to people, time zones and hours apart that we probably never would come across physically. It's just too big a world. But that's why we love social media and the internet. I'd like to introduce Gabrielle Dolan. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Paul. Very excited to be speaking to you and Matt today about all things storytelling.
This is right up our alley. The biggest thing for us to be to keep our mouth shut, I think, today. But go ahead.
Only knowing you for a few minutes, I think that might be hard.
Yeah. Yeah, you should hear my students. But you start off, go back wherever you want to start this journey and episode from, and we'll take it over when we get a chance to ask questions.
Yeah, look, I'll probably start my story when I worked for one of Australia's largest banks, and this was going back 25 years ago, and it was in my final few years at the bank where I was leading major digital transformation, although we didn't call it digital transformation back then, it was just like change. I started to notice that when I shared stories, it seemed to get the message across better. So after a few years of experimenting, I remember thinking, I think there's something in this storytelling as a business skill, as a way to communicate and lead better. So I decided to leave my corporate job. Our children were 2 and 5 at the time, and I thought, if it doesn't work out, I'll spend a couple of years home with the kids and I'll just go back and get another job. Well, it'd be fair to say that it's worked out. So it's 21 years later. I've had an amazing career working around the world, teaching people storytelling. I've just published my 8th book, and I say that with genuine surprise because the only other person that I think would be totally surprised I've written 8 books is my English teacher in my final year of school, who failed me in English because apparently I could not grasp basic grammar, and I think grammar's overrated. That's why you have editors, seriously.
Wow, that's fantastic. Wow. 8 books? Holy cow. And never
Yeah.
never never an idea you'd be writing one, I can tell.
I seriously, the thought of even writing one would have, it
Horrifying.
was only, a business mentor said, if you want to be known, as a thought leader or write a book, so you write a book and then you sort of write another one. And 5 years ago, I'd written my 7th book on storytelling, and I seriously thought, there's only so many books you can write about this, so thought I'd never write another one. But I sort of felt compelled to write this one because of people kept asking me, will AI replace storytelling? And I was so horrified by that question. And I was, then I started thinking, no, your stories are needed now more than ever in a world of AI generated content. So it's probably out of the 8, Matt, it's probably the only one I felt really compelled to write. I sort of felt
Okay.
like I need to write this. So yeah, eight is a surprise, believe me.
Well, Gabrielle, what was the moment or the moments that you went, this storytelling thing is engaging, important? I mean, I'm picturing, and correct me when I'm wrong, you're in your banking world, you're communicating with other employees, with customers, with whatever, and then when do you realize this matters? This skill, as you said, is important.
Yeah, look, and it wasn't like one incident. It was probably an incident over a couple of years, but it was when I was in the bank, and my role was a change manager. So I would have to go out to the business units and talk about why we were changing and why we had to implement this system. And if you've had any experience of leading change, there's always pushback, and people just most change fails because it doesn't get communicated properly. And what I started to notice is that when I'd shared a story about why, it was sort of like people would sort of go, "Oh yeah, that sort of makes sense." So yeah, guess I understand it. No, it wasn't a silver bullet, but I sort of started to think when I start to share a story, and almost made it like a something from my non-work related to why we need to change. People seem to get the message more. And then I started to notice that you'd see someone speak on stage and you'd always think, God, they're brilliant, brilliant presenters. And they'll go, why are they brilliant presenters? It was like they were sharing stories.
Yeah.
And I would even look around me and I would identify the really great leaders that God, I would love to work for them. What were they doing? They were sharing stories. So I had in previous roles done a lot of designing and delivering of leadership programs, like leadership development programs. So because of that, I just thought, I think this is a skill. I like people. Naturally, we tell stories, but there's a real skill in telling them effectively in a business situation. And in your teaching careers, you would know this. I mean, the very, very best teachers share stories, but you don't see it so much in in business.
But funny story, I was just going to add that I taught social studies for years, and that's one of the most boring subjects for high school kids. But when you add movie scenes and share stories and have guest speakers come in, social studies is a soap opera, really.
Yeah.
And if you share those stories, it becomes really interesting because people are invested and can relate. And I think it's great for the business world. Speakers, all that stuff. Stories are everything.
Yeah, and it's an everyday, and a lot of people sort of think it's just for presentation. This is an everyday skill, whether you're speaking to your team, whether you're speaking to clients, customers, stakeholders, whether you're having a one-on-one conversation, even, you know what, even with your kids, sharing stories with your kids are so powerful because it sort of suspends judgment and they sort of just listen to the message without sort of going
Mm.
to the what would you know, mum type thing.
Gabrielle, give a real world example, an everyday example to me, to anyone. Say like,
Yeah.
what do you mean when you say storytelling?
Yeah, yeah, thanks. I was going to share an example because, like, you're right. Some people go, "What do you mean by that?" So,
Yeah.
let me share one that I often share because I think it really captures the power of sharing a story. Now, I should say, in the book, I talk about the four different types of stories. I think one of the most powerful ones is the personal story, and what I mean by that is it just didn't happen at work, but you've attached it to a work message. So. This example I want to share with you came from I was doing some work with a risk team. So it was the entire risk team. And the head of risk, her name was Rosemary. And Rosemary said, one of the biggest issues I have is when I talk about risk management to the business units I support, whenever risk is raised, they go, well, you're the risk manager, that's your job, right? And she said, it doesn't matter how many times I've told them, I cannot manage your risk for you. All I can do is help you manage your risk. She goes, the message doesn't get through. And she was really frustrated. She said, I've tried everything. I've given example after example, case study after case study, but it hasn't worked. So she tried everything except a personal story. So this is the story she started to share. She said, when I was a kid, I grew up on a farm. And growing up on a farm, there was all these dangers we needed to be aware of, but mum would teach us what to do. So we knew what to do when we came across redback spiders in the timber heap. We knew about all the potential traps in the dam after heavy rain, and we knew what to do if we ever came across a snake in summer. And I remember this day I was running down to get my bike, and then I just froze because in front of my bike was this massive copperhead snake. But I remembered everything Mum taught us to do. So I played statues. I slowly walked backwards until there was enough space between me and the snake, and I ran back to the house to tell Mum. And I'm sharing this with you because it reminds me of the role we play in risk. All I can do is give you the skills, knowledge, and advice. So when you come across your own copperhead snake, regardless of what that looks like, you will know what to do. Now, can I ask you three questions about that story?
Absolutely.
Does does that story help you understand the role of a risk manager and the role you play in risk better? Does it help you understand the message better?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. So great. So that's your first challenge in communicating,
Right.
that you actually understand the message. Do you think you'll remember the story?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
There's a
will.
snake in it, for God's sake.
Yeah, exactly. So and we can and I can talk about why stories are so memorable, but you
Yeah.
will remember that
Yeah.
story. And thirdly, if you had to could you retell it to someone else without losing its meaning? You wouldn't do it word for word,
Yeah,
but you
without
could
losing its meaning, yes. We've all been
absolutely.
children, right? We've all been, and we've all like that's so related. Yeah. So the answer is yes.
It's so relatable. Even like you don't have
I
to
never
be in
grew
that
up on a farm in
specific.
Australia, but it's exactly right. Yeah.
We've all been in a situation where so some
Yeah.
of the fundamental challenges we have when we're communicating is do people really understand it? Like really understand the message? Can they remember it? Like when the meeting's over, the presentation's
Yeah.
finished, the conversation's ended, and can they retell it? And a story, a personal story will give you traction on those three things, like understand, remember, retell, where facts, figures, stats, yeah, yes, still need them, not saying you don't need them, they're just not sticky. You just don't
Hmm.
remember that stuff.
Is there maybe you don't this isn't I don't know, maybe this is a question you know the answer to, maybe there isn't or it isn't, but is there something I would guess biological in us that we understand stories versus the stats that it's those kinds of why is it so much stickier, I wonder?
Yeah, so a couple of things. We're humans. Like the one thing that sets humans apart from any other species is our ability to tell stories. So we're hardwired to sort of tell stories, hardwired to listen to stories. But what makes it so sticky is it taps into emotion. Now, when I
Hmm.
say emotion, I'm not talking about emotional, like you've got to be like scared of snakes or anything. It's just it taps into an emotion by default. And our brain processes emotion differently. And first of all, we as human beings we process emotion first then logic. So a lot of people will say we buy on emotion and justify on logic, and we absolutely do. And the other thing that happens with emotion, it gets stored in the long-term part of your brain. So the reason you're going to remember that story is it gets stored in the long-term part of your brain. And that's, I think in business we have a over reliance on facts and figures and data that this is going to, get the message across and give credibility, but it's just not sticky at all. I remember a few years ago I was actually in the States. I was in New York with my daughter and we went to the 9/11 Memorial Museum and we went on a tour. And just like any tour, you go and you hear lots of facts and figures and stats about stuff, and you hear stories. We were walking out, and my daughter Jess said, "Mum, how tall did the guy say that column was?" And I went, "Ah, I can't remember. I couldn't remember any of the facts. Now, I'm not saying they weren't. They were really interesting at the time. I just couldn't remember them. The stories I heard, I will remember forever. The
Mm.
stories I heard. So it's not about saying get rid of data. It's just almost saying how do you make your data sticky through a story?
Do you look, I look at my business, okay, and
Hmm.
my business is there's a lot of data, right? Like any business, there's
Yeah, yeah,
nothing
yeah. This heaps.
unique
Yeah.
about mine. But I'll let's say I'm talking to my store managers, right? And
Hmm.
we've got metrics that are food costs, labor costs, sales, the things that we measured and are very important to the success of our business. And the thing that I get so frustrated with, I'm sure this won't shock you at all, is these things are so important. They're sticky to me, let me tell you, Gabrielle, because it's my money. So it's sticky to me, but less than half of my managers would be able to repeat their goals and the data, right? And
Hmm.
we do as a team have a very difficult time getting getting that across in the right way. What would your book say about that? Or and not to put you on the spot, or
I
I'm
know.
not looking for a specific story, but what's the strategy at that point?
Yeah, yeah, no, no. I'm happy to be put on the spot. I'll give you some live coaching. So you're right. The end result, as in the sales, as in the targets, is probably real. It is really important to you because it's your money. It's probably less important to your employees. And I think sometimes as a business owner, you got to go, well, it probably is less important to them
No doubt
because it's
about it.
not their money, right?
No, it would be to me
I
too if
would,
I were in their position.
yeah, yeah. So I would say some of the I would be going as a CEO of a manager, it's focus on the process throughout the important. So sales, I would imagine sales is because they're delivering unbelievable customer service or stuff
Mm,
like that.
mm,
So the stories need to be around that. The stories need to be around, if one of your values is go above and beyond and deliver the most exceptional customer service because you know that's going to increase sales, the stories be around that, and then you're sharing stories of exceptional customer service. If one of your values is around integrity, you're sharing stories about that because the data is the result of all of that behavior. So it would sort of be, if you're going to have a story about anything about the data, I would have a story about to saying what we do up to that is important, and the data is just like an outcome. It's like when you go on a diet, you jump on the scales, that's just a result of all the behavior you've had the last month. It's not the important thing isn't you're not trying to influence the data, you're trying to influence the behavior.
I love it. It's perfect, and I mean that's applicable to so many, like you said, your diet, anything, right? What
Anything, yeah.
I love it. That's a great example.
Yeah.
Paul, I could see you have something on the tip of your
Yeah,
tongue. Go
no,
ahead.
that's fine. I love everything. I mean, when we first connected, you had me at stories. So, but what intrigues me is you talk about the need for authentic stories, and
Hmm.
then you mentioned in some of our emails how you can get AI to cooperate with you in doing that.
Yeah.
That-
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more about that because, boy, I'll tell you, someone that's around high school kids a lot, they would just assume never take an English class again and just use AI.
Yeah, yeah. So I know a lot of people first, go, what do you mean you can use AI? So I said before, the reason I wrote the book is because people were asking me, will AI replace storytelling? And it was like, oh my God, no, please. Like, please don't ever let us get into that situation. But then I had more and more people ask me, can you use AI to help with your stories? Now, my initial reaction, Paul, was probably a bit like yours. It was like, no, no, that's cheating. Or book, I thought, well, I should start like, experimenting with this. And so I did start experimenting. Example, I've just told you the snake story about risk management. I put into AI, can you give me a personal story around risk management? And it came back with, and I was about to, I'm not going to say I was pleasantly surprised. I was disturbed, but it was missing something. And what it was motion, what it just something didn't seem quite right. And it didn't seem quite right because it wasn't true. But as I experimented more, and I talked about the four types of stories: personal, professional, parable, and public. AI is really good helping with those public and parable stories because they're out there. It'd just be like Google search on it. What I found is I initially thought AI is going to be not, AI will not help you at all with your personal stories. But what I've now realized is you don't get AI to write the story. You get AI to be your storytelling coach. So, Matt, we were just talking an example before. You could go, okay, I'm actually, okay, you've convinced me a personal story is good. I want to talk to my team about the importance of integrity, right?
Okay.
But I can't think of a story. If you and I were having a coffee, I would go, well, first of all, what does integrity mean to you? And you would go, well, it means if you say you're going to do something, do it, right? Okay. Then I would go, okay, so can you think of a time or can you think of a time when someone, was that something your parents instilled in you or a teacher? And I would ask you all these questions, and I can guarantee you will think of a story.
Right.
And so it's getting AI to play that storytelling coach. So literally saying, I need to figure around questions that will help me uncover stories. So you're using it as your creative partner, just as you would use me. Now, what AI is going to do next is go pick one, give me a few bullet points, and it will turn it into a story. And it does that. Again, pretty good. And I always say it can be good. It sounds good, but does it sound like you? and is it accurate? And that's where the mistake can be. So Paul, that's when it can be really lazy. If you're getting AI to refine your stories and you go, oh, that sounds really good, does it sound like you? And the way to do that is like say it out loud. And if it's using words that you wouldn't normally use, or it's starting to sound all a little bit cliche, which AI generated stories do, then just, or if it's not even accurate, like sometimes it'll put in things that you go, that didn't happen, but actually this happened, and it reminds you of what happened, then you change your story. So you can use AI as your creative partner. You don't have to. You absolutely do not. I mean, I've been sharing stories. Well, we've all been sharing stories for a long time without AI. If people have an over reliance on AI, then their stories will start to lose something, and it'll start to lose the authenticity and the uniqueness of it.
It's interesting. I think I'm going to have students try that with, we go on a lot of class visits, and on Thursdays, they can be anywhere in the world but my classroom. So they have a lot of mentorships and internships. I
Hmm.
think I'm going to have them take a picture of where they're at and ask AI questions, explaining, and at the same time answer them by explaining what they were doing and see what they come up with. I think that'd be a cool project.
Yeah, yeah. What they were learning, how they felt, stuff like that. Um, yeah, so I mean, the book, it's interesting when I tell people the title of the new book. I go, "Oh, it's story intelligence," and they sort of go, "Oh, mm-hmm." And then I go, "The tagline is the craft of authentic storytelling made smarter with AI," and then people go, "Oh, wow, that," because it's like I'm saying the craft of authentic storytelling, but AI can help. But yeah, you don't, it's still ultimately a storytelling book. This is ultimately a storytelling book with a bit of how AI can help. I mean, there's a whole chapter on how you can use AI. There's a whole chapter on how you can find stories without AI. I mean, through your photo albums or your photos on your phone, and you can, it'll prompt you of stories. So, but yeah, it's interesting to explore how AI can be used.
I would imagine just the as someone who would want to tell a story, if back to the word authentic, if it's not you, if it's not your story, I mean, sure you could write it down on a piece of paper and submit it to, Paul's class or whatever. But if you're talking about influencing people, right, and changing behaviors and getting to what you really want, the result of people, remembering it, whatever it is, we have this built-in authenticity indicator in us, right? And when
Yeah, yeah.
someone's not authentic, most of us see through it pretty quickly. Is
Yeah.
my experience.
Absolutely. And look, I'm from Australia, and I think we have one of the highest BS detectors in the world. Australia. It's interesting that because I'm on workshops, and I will often still get asked to be true. Like if it's believable and gets the message across, sort of no harm done, little white lie. And I always say to them, okay, so I've just shared Rosemary's story about the copperhead snake. Say if you heard Rosemary share that story, and in the break you went, God, I really loved your story about the snake. I grew up on a farm too. Where did you grow up? And she goes, Oh, I grew up in the city. I made that up. So she's now told you the story's made up. Where's her credibility? Can you see that? That's more than a little white lie. It's
Hmm.
actually more than a lie. What it feels like is a
Yeah.
betrayal of trust, and what it feels like is emotional manipulation. And the reality is, I think the only reason people would potentially make up stories is because they think their stories are not big enough or important enough. And those little ones, like, coming across a snake, they're really relevant. Like, as you said when I told it, Matt, it's like you didn't grow up on a farm in Australia and you come across a snake, but those little day-to-day ones are the most relevant and the powerful, for teachers to share, for leaders to share, for salespeople to share. They're just so powerful.
What do you do if you have experience? I assume it's going to be easier to tell stories. What do you do if you're younger and you're trying to tell stories when you present? What do you draw
Good
from?
question.
Yeah, no, look, and I guess it stands to reason. If you're only 20 and you're 60, you've
Right.
probably got three times the amount of stories, but you don't need a lot of stories. So, like, even if I like this example I gave to Matt before was like you're trying to find a story around integrity about if you say you're going to do something, do it. A 20-year-old could answer that. Like, and it could be, and um, so they've still got stories, and it's just finding the right stories. And most what I find most people go, I don't have any stories. It's they've got stories, but they're dismissing them as they're not important enough. Like no one would be interested in this, and that's exactly what people are interested in.
That's a great point. If you're 18 years old, there's stuff that you think's a real big deal and could inspire or help others that me as 53 think's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So don't dismiss your stories. It's you only have what you're going through at that point in your life. So
Yeah,
I think you can use it
absolutely.
to help other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I often, I mean, my daughters are 22 and 23 and going for job interviews, and they don't have any work experience, like clearly because they're just starting out. But, it could be going, well, and I help them go, but, when you were in that school play, you had to like work as a team. And when you did this, and it's helping them find those, like, especially around values, where has that been demonstrated before? And they don't they could be about your parents. Like, as a kid, you could be talking about your parents and what you admire them, just as a parent, you could be talking about your kids and what you admire about them. And that's demonstrating that this value is really important to you.
Gabrielle, when you shifting gears a little bit here, when you took this leap from your career to jumping out on your own and deciding to do this, what what surprised you the most? And was it slow going at the beginning? Like was it slow going? Was it difficult to get going? What were you trying to do, and what was surprising? I know that's a lot.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And just reflecting, what did surprise me, really surprised me now, looking back, of how slow it was. Like as in the pushback I would get from business people going, what the hell has storytelling got to do with business? I would even, predominantly I'd go into an organization and I'd be speaking normally to the head of comms, so the head of comms, or sometimes the head of HR. Um, they would say to me, can we call it, instead of calling it storytelling training, can we call it influence training or communication skills? I go, yep, you can call it whatever you like because it is that. They're going to learn how to tell stories. So that it surprised me more. And so therefore it was slow and it was hard. And, 4 or 5 years in, I was hardly anything to like anything compared to what I was earning. Part of my motivation, and it's not about money. You think, God, if I was still working in corporate, I'd be earning 4 times of earning. Part of me go was part of, I'm home with, and it eventually started to change, and it probably about 8 or 9 years in, I could see the shift between people going, this isn't relevant. That little cohort was getting less and less and less and less. I would never come across someone like that now. I remember one time I ran a workshop for a company, and it was up in far north Queensland. So there was a lot of big tradies, like a lot of big men in the room. And there was this one guy, and he would have been in his 60s, mid 60s. He had a really long beard. I still remember it because he sort of looked like Santa Claus. And he was a big, bulky guy, and and I did the workshop. And at the end, is there any questions? And he put his hand up, and he goes, I don't have a question, I just have a statement. And part of me was going, oh my God, here we go. And he just said, I'm about to retire in 3 weeks, and I wish I had learnt this skill 40 years ago. It was like, oh my God, it's like, and that happened probably about 12 years ago. And I think that time when I go, yeah, we're in story, if Father Christmas can see the thing in storytelling, we're all in.
That's funny. That's interesting. I because I know I don't want to, I'm very aware of when people are storytelling and the power
Yep.
of it. And it's not that I'm smarter or anything like this. I've just read about it. I've paid attention to it. It's been brought to my attention, so I pay attention, right, to it.
Hmm.
So I'm continually impressed with how easy it is to connect with a speaker when they're telling stories. And I'm continually embarrassed how little I do it when when I'm trying to talk to people who I want to get something through to. Is there a technique? Is there a thing that you would say to people like, yeah, that's very common, and here's what I recommend? Like, how do you get people in that mode? Because for me, it's just so simple to go, the data says da 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 da,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
know it
yeah.
doesn't, so I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
So, first of all, Matt, it is very common because we have spent our entire career being told that presenting the data and the facts and the figures and the charts and everything like that is professional. That is what is expected. Now, I would say, if I was working with you, I'd go, you know what? You should start with a personal story. And that is like sometimes so like shocking. Like I have people go, "What? So you just start with the story?" And I go, "Yes, that's like just start with the story." And so they're thinking, no one's ever done that. I haven't seen people do it. So it actually takes a bit of courage to do it. Now, it's not courage about sharing a vulnerable story because I'm not talking about that. It's actually courage to do something different that's not expected. Because what if I get judged? So that's what we say. And I always sort of say, well, people are judging you already, and if
Anyway.
you're not sharing a story, they're going, that was a boring one thing. But what I do, and I guess it's what I do training in the workshops. Part of me, why I love what I do, it gives I believe I give people permission to tell a story, to almost say, especially the ones that think it's not professional. It's like, oh, it is professional, and if your job is to communicate this and influence and inspire, you need to be telling a story. So give permission, and then teaching them how to do it gives them the capability, which then gives them the confidence to do it. And there is a skill there, like being clear on the message. Would it be worthwhile if I tried to condense my the 30 seconds? Would
Yep.
that be useful? So the key thing is be clear on the single message. So if we go back to the example, Matt, like if you want to share what integrity, I would go, what does that mean to you personally? What does it mean to you personally? I would keep asking you that. I'd ask you that question 3 times, and I guarantee you might say something, and then the second time I asked you, you'd probably go, oh, yeah, gee, I haven't really thought about it this much before. So it's
Right.
forcing people to think about it and then get that one single message, one message per story. Don't try to put everything into one story. It needs to be super succinct. I say that your stories need to be around 60 to 90 seconds.
Mm.
I've
Oh,
heard some brilliant stories being told in 30 seconds. If you are going longer than 90 seconds, and believe me, if you are hitting the 2 minute mark, people are starting to think, get to the point. And
Mm.
the moment anyone starts to think, get to the point, you're losing them. And I sort of say to people, if anyone's told you get to the point, they've been thinking of it for a hell of a long time. And you got to be mindful, like if you're the CEO or if you're the lecturer, for example, you hold a position of power. So probably people aren't going to say to you, get to the point. So you're never going to hear that. So I just say, if you're going for it's too long. Um, and then there's some techniques like how to start a story. Start a story with time and place. Like when I was a kid, I grew up on a farm, or oh, that reminds me when I went on an African safari last year. So it's time and place. Want to avoid starting your story with "Let me tell you a story." Because can you feel the physical reaction when people go, "Let me tell
yeah.
you a story"? It's like, please don't. It's just
Yeah.
like, just tell me
It's
the
like
point.
watching home movies.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then and what you leave out. But most importantly, how you end it. You sort of want to end it in a way that people get the message, but without you telling them the message. Like the worst way to end a story is the moral of the story is. So
Mm.
you want people to, and so that's the whole skill in taking a story and how you connect it to your message without, drumming people over the head with the message.
Gabrielle, this was fantastic. Can you share your websites or socials or links where people can buy your books and find more about you?
Yeah,
I want to have you. I want to have you back on already. I feel like we're just getting
I
started.
yeah,
know, me
no.
too.
I
I
know
know.
we could that happens often if we could do part two and we can go even deeper. But yeah, look,
I like that.
LinkedIn's a great way. Gabrielle Dolan on LinkedIn. My website's gabrielledolan.com. And my book, Story Intelligence, just hold it up here. That's available everywhere on Amazon. It debuted in December in Australia, and it debuted at number one on Australia's business books. And ever
Wow.
since then, it's been sitting. It's reached number one on Amazon's hot releases in four different categories, like business communication, presentations, so social skills. So pretty. I think it's hitting the mark because it's
Congratulations. That's
yeah, no, it's
fantastic.
That's
a lot of
awesome.
people, a lot of people have told me it's my best book ever. So I'm taking that. I'm just taking that as a thank you, not thinking, oh gee, were my other books really bad?
Right.
It's like,
It's
Don't, yeah,
definitely
don't
going to be
don't go
on.
deeper
just
than
get,
you need to.
yeah. I don't know. You stop your head from going deeper, and you just go, thank you.
It's definitely going to be on my to-do read list.
Mine too. Mine too.
Yeah,
Gabrielle,
excellent.
you said it and we confirmed it on air because this is being recorded. We'll definitely have you on for a part two. That would be a lot of fun.
I'd like that.
I look forward to it. Look forward to it. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Very
Thanks so
good.
much for your time and coming on.
Pleasure.
Bye.